I arbitrarily assumed a certain porosity, water saturation, and strictly gas, no gas-oil ratio in there. So there's a lot of variables that can change those volumes. But I hope with the new reprocessing, we can narrowly define it more. Item 2, just to jump onto it, the definition of the salt edge over time. Basically, I have 1/3 of a square mile data set that DNR was delivered to me. And this data set is what I would call low frequency and has a lot of unknowns in it. It was said to be a certain type of seismic volume, and that's what I've been using as the before picture, the 2007. And I'm comparing this to a high resolution, high frequency 2013 data set. Well, I can see the salt edge on the 2007 data set, and I can see the salt edge in the 2013, and I've made my best interpretation of where that salt wall is. And my best interpretation to date is that it's in basically the same position, 2007 versus 13. The only thing that's not in the same position is what is possibly in this disturbed rock zone, which we all know that exists, because there's a conduit between the Oxy 3 cavern and the sinkhole. That's a given from all groups. So I see the salt is in the same position. But with this liberated, disturbed material coming up the salt flank, that's where there's changes, not in the salt wall. Go ahead.
Yeah, where it's small, you know, it gets small out of that, where you say it's going through the salt. Is that where the ledge did this and then?
Yeah, the salt in general looks, you know, it's very flat at the top, about 700 feet from the surface, and then as you come to the west side, it gets steeper and steeper, and then it becomes recumbent, and then it comes straight back down. That's a very weird bulge, and then comes straight down, and then below 7,000 feet it fans out again.
It's going through that bulge?
Pardon me?
It's going through the bulge? The lip port, you said.
Yeah, the salt wall goes right here, and the disturbed rock zone is outside of the salt. So it's like an envelope on the outside of the salt.
Where the small port
If the salt is right here, the DRZ is right beside the salt, best we can tell. It's not going through the salt. It's on the west side.
It's small right by the salt.
Yes.
Right, it's a small envelope along the side of the salt wall. So the best I can tell is basically in the same position. So the salt has not moved. That doesn't mean that everything outside is not moving. We know that something is moving upward, and that's fluids and gas emissions.
Just ask a question, going back to the gas, and I'm trying to get an idea. You're saying you got 60 million cubic feet of rock zone that you believe is saturated with some type of hydrocarbon.
No, 60 million cubic feet of gas.
Gas. Now, I guess for the residents' position is, you know, what's the significance of that? So you make a determination, what are we trying to accomplish now? Is to try to give these people a timetable of, you know, if we continue to bend at this present rate, how long can we be in this stage? How long can we be in this event?
Well, as Gary had mentioned, our best interpretation of the thin veneer of gas that's in the base, on the top of the aquifer, at about 130 feet, our best interpretation from the well logs, the PDK logs that we've drilled out here, which are about 32 now, is that there's about 45 million cubic feet of gas in that thin veneer on the top of the aquifer. Compare that to 60, it's almost a balance.
I guess, you know, we've been here a year, and we're trying to get to these interpretations. We're hearing about gas and hourglass and disturbed rock zone. I guess that everybody's here continues to come to these meetings. What is the significance of all of this?
Well, the significance is if I can determine what volume is in the ground that is liberating to the surface, part of it is balancing, doing the mass balance between the two. So if this is all the gas that could liberate from the subsurface into the aquifer, then we know what kind of timetable we might be dealing with to deplete this reservoir. And it's either going through flaring of the gas wells, or it's volatilizing to the atmosphere through bubbling.
I'm just getting, you know, at 45 million cubic feet of gas, at the present rate that Texas mine is bending off, I see years. Not months.
Marty, what all this is meaning, we're in for a long haul.
Okay?
I think that's what we're here to tell the people, we can talk in scientific terms, but the reality of it is based on best estimates from the scientific community is that we got millions of cubic feet of gas, and at the present rate of venting, we're here for years to come.
Well, it's not just venting, Marty. The sinkhole continues to grow. It continues to expand, as people know. We've got a long ways to go.
So why can't you just, with the latest, since you guys get all the information, why can't you just, one day sit down and come in and say, as of the latest flaring volume, this is what we have left that we estimate left, and this is the number of years flaring at the current rate that we're going to be here.
I did that already, Nick.
And what is it?
If they flare at 25 MCF a day, if they flare at 25 MCF a day, it's a little over 3 years. Using today as an example, they're flaring about 17 MCF a day. So in that estimate, we're almost 5 years. So it really is dependent on how much volume they can actually get to flare.
All right, now that's based on
Simple calculations. We have about 16 million that has been vented through the calculations. Take that away from the 45. Also in my suspect estimate, I took 1 million off for the bubbling locations and used the remaining amount to calculate it.
Now we're stuck on this 45 million, but how do you know that it's not more than that? If there are other possible, probables and possibles.
And I'm relying on the folks here, and I don't know who wants to respond, but that's an early estimate. As my
Nick, here's what the problem is. We know we still have gas coming up the sinkhole. John takes videos of it every time it goes out on the hydrotrack, so we're pretty sure it's still coming up. The rate it's coming up, I can't tell you. But the chances are we still have some gas coming into the MRA. So the number I gave you several months ago was 45 million. That was what we could account for at that point in time. If you're venting and you still have some coming in, it's going to lengthen the time it takes to relieve all the gas. That's just the way it is. Right now, there's a lot of investigation going on, but all the data we've got says they're taking gas out, but we've got some additional gas coming up through the collapse zone.
All right. Along with that, so you've got gas coming up, and it's coming up everywhere. So right now, we've only talked about methane natural gas. Sunday, I happened to have a lodger come to my house, and he had a hydrogen sulfide analyzer. Took a test, and got 2 hits coming out of the ground, bubble. Now, there's 3 locations near me, and we all got hydrogen sulfide. So we haven't talked about that coming up. Apparently it's like the gas. At first we didn't have bubbles. Eventually the volume built to a point where the bubbles are everywhere.
Nick, right now, we've been on the hydrogen sulfide issue since it started. All the gas samples we collect are analyzed for hydrogen sulfide. The most recent one, we haven't got the results back. We only sampled Monday. The hydrogen sulfide hits that are showing up in the community, I'm viewing those as positive hits. What we don't know is where that gas is coming from, where the hydrogen sulfide is coming from, because we're in a swamp environment. Some of it could be from decay of material. But right now, we are looking at hydrogen sulfide every time we collect a gas sample, okay? And we've just retained Dr. Saunders from the University of Auburn, who's a hydrogen sulfide expert. He's now under contract with DNR to come in and advise the Blue Ribbon Commission on the hydrogen sulfide issue.
Have you, with the test that's come up with AQS, have you run into serious issues relative to hydrogen sulfide? Or
The one field hit is 6 ppm. Usually the action level is 10 parts per million. The 6 ppm is something that we have to watch. We have not, and now I'm talking about in the community. Obviously, the hydrogen sulfide, as we reported before, out of the cap rock and out of the cavern, is way above any health and safety threshold. But right now, what we're doing, we're checking the bubble sites, we check the ORW wells, we're checking the geoprobes for hydrogen sulfide every time we sample them. We are getting low hits in the community. I can't explain why it hasn't been there before and now it's showing up. As you said, Nick, things are evolving. Every time our guys go out to check the geoprobes, part of their routine is monitor for hydrogen sulfide.
Well, you know,
Well, yours is about how you start, I'll go ahead and ask something else.
well, when they come to check my geoprobe, when I'm around there, they tell me they didn't get any hit from H2S. Okay? But 10, 15 feet away, guy sticks a probe down there and he gets 2 hits.
What kind of concentrations do you know?
Oh, they're light, they're light.
Yeah.
But, didn't have anything before.
I know.
Didn't have bubbles before, and then they appeared. Now, didn't have hydrogen sulfide, now it's appeared. Who's to say at what point in time the volume decreases?
Right now, the hydrogen sulfide below the community, the indications are it's coming from natural decay in the shallow subsurface. It's not coming from the cavern.
Sounds like an excuse. What?
No,
That's not an excuse.
we just gotta continue to monitor it.
This is, it's strange to me that we've got H2S in that little area.
All I can tell you, Nick, is we're going to be looking at it. We do have an expert coming in to help us out. We're looking at methods we can use to try to fingerprint. Hydrogen sulfide is much more difficult to fingerprint than methane is.
You really, Doc, it really doesn't matter where it comes from. From our perspective, from where it doesn't matter where it comes from. If it comes from natural sources or it comes from the cavern, it doesn't really matter. If you get to certain levels, there's a dangerous situation.
You're right.
So with the conversation of where it fingerprints, it really doesn't matter. From the resident perspective.
But what worries me is that, I sent it out and nobody came to the house. Nobody came to check. Nobody came to verify. Nobody. Today, I witnessed a truck come by my house, parked. 3 guys in it. 2 guys get out, and they go, and, they spend a little time, and they run back to the truck. So I go there and say, hey, guys, how y'all doing? What's going on? Well, we're checking bubble sites, okay? So, did you get a hit? Did you get a reading? Did you see anything? Well, no, we're just filming. So he gets his cell phone and he's taking pictures. So I said, well, how can you see the bubbles with all the vegetation? Whenever the bubble sites were originally identified, there was no vegetation, the water level was high, and the bubbles were coming out. Now the water's dropped, vegetation is thick, you're not going to see anything.
Okay.
They spent, the little bit of time that they spent there, it was like, well, we can say we were at the site and we didn't see it. It makes you wonder as to the quality of what they're doing.
I wanted to ask you, getting back to the sinkhole thing, originally, I think at the first meeting, it was indicated that probably the maximum that we get would be 1,400 feet per annum. Are you still holding to that figure? gave you